Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Stars sports podcast, Chiefs podcast. We're also on YouTube. Glad you can join us. We're here with Jesse Newell, Chiefs beat writer, and star columnist Vahe Gregorian. And guys, just before we went on, I have my script laid out here like I always do. It's not a script, it's just a notepad. And the whole first page is covered with left tackle and passing game and all the pressures and Mahomes' ankle and everything. And then as I sat down, I thought, you know what, let's change it up. Let's start with the defense. Let's talk about the defense and what an impressive game they had. First of all, no update. We're recording this about 1:00 on Monday. There is no update on the Mahomes ankle injury that I've heard. Maybe you've heard something differently, Jesse, Vahe, but I haven't.
I have not. I haven't looked in like the last 5 minutes, but I don't think so. And I don't think we have, more to the point, I don't think we have any anticipation of people we would try to get that news from, clarifying anything today, or at least not this hour today.
Yeah, I mean, we'll hear from Andy Reid on Tuesday. Ian Rappaport from NFL Network said a mild high ankle sprain, which is basically sort of what they were expecting, I think, when this whole thing went down. It seemed like it's going to be bad, but he's dealt with this before. So, we were talking about the Vegas line that's happened here, guys. And as of yesterday, when we were flying back, it was Chiefs were 1.5 point underdogs. I checked in today, and now it's Chiefs are 3 point underdogs. So, I mean, if you want to read the tea leaves there, this thing seems to be trending towards Patrick Mahomes not playing against the Texans this week. But why talk about that when, Blair, we can start with the defense?
Let's start with the defense. We'll get into Mahomes, and like I said, a little bit later. It's just I was pretty impressed with these guys yesterday. All of a sudden, a team that could absolutely get no turnovers, no takeaways, ends up with almost matching their season total in one game with six. Was it 4 interceptions and 2 fumble recoveries? They held the Cleveland Browns, albeit a bad Cleveland Browns team, to I think it was 268 total yards, not the fewest that they've allowed this season, but among the fewest. 5 sacks. Everybody contributed. Seriously, I mean, everybody contributed on the defensive side and special teams as well. So what is it about the randomness of turnovers, Jesse, that you don't get any for weeks, and then all of a sudden in one game, voila, there's 6 of them?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the right word there, Blair, which is randomness. If you look at studies year to year in the NFL, what's most predictable year after year is offense. You have the football. You know what I mean? You control what goes on with the football. If you're the defense, you try to dictate things, you try to mix things up. Obviously, you have choices in personnel and how you do certain things. But at the end of the day, if the other team does not give you the ball or throw the ball to you, you can't create turnovers. And so the Chiefs have been a little bit unlucky this year when it comes to certain numbers like that. Typically over time, you recover half of the fumbles that are forced, and the Chiefs were way low on that. They were way down there. They were due to have a couple bounce their way. That really is random luck. But as far as interceptions go, they met up with the right opponent. I talked to the guys in the locker room about it, and this is sort of going back to a little bit of like the Leo Chanel blocked field goal, where some things had to go right for the Chiefs. They got a little bit fortunate in that moment that they still executed at a high level. But at the same time, some of this stuff is not coincidence or accident either. Leo's talking about, an assistant coach, their outside linebackers coach, Rod Wilson, who had previously worked with the Bears or played with the Bears, with Peanut Tillman, who was the cornerback perfectionist at punching out forced fumbles. And so his presentations every week are on how to punch out forced fumbles. And if you watch Leo's technique in that one, it's perfect. It's from the top down. It's going to be really hard for you to not fumble the football the way he punched at it and got it out. And so that's not just a credit to, they got lucky, things swung their way. That's them making a play. That's them practicing a play. And Brian Cook, even talking about in the locker room, just said, hey, people can say, hey, he kind of made that fluky play. No, that's 1,000 times he's practiced that rep in practice, and it comes to fruition. Now, again, the Chiefs didn't have that before this week, but, some of this just game situation, some of this matchup dependent. I thought it was very interesting, Blair, or Vahe, after the game, where Trent McDuffie was talking about, he said, we thought we could get a few in this one. And obviously he was referencing the Browns and Jameis Winston. And it was a windy day. It was more windy than we thought it was going to be going in there. And so it kind of made some of those passes float up there in the wind. But the Chiefs deserve credit for taking advantage of it. Will it be consistent week to week? Probably not. But where they do a little bit of good luck there, probably so.
Just one quick thing Jesse, you covered it so well. I always think of that expression, luck is preparation meeting opportunity. And that's a little bit of how I look at this, right? The Chiefs, I mean, the things that happened reflected coaching and reflected practice work. Brian Cook's play, my gosh, that was as good a catch as we've seen by any Chief this season, offense or defense. And, so each of those plays had its own story, as Jesse got into. And I think that it all computes into this sort of the random file that Jesse's so good, I think, at assessing. Over time, these things will play out in such a way that those numbers should even out, like you described with the fumbles. They were kind of due. Over time, that will happen. But we've come to see this season more than most that the overtime part is full of different events in the making before it comes to that.
Maybe most importantly, Blair, is these guys in the locker room, Justin Reid, Brian Cook, both said confidence boost. And I thought Brian kind of discussed things very interesting. He said, every year is a new team and you find a new identity. And they struggled the last 4 weeks, guys. I mean, this was starting to be a team where it's like this offense has got to pick up because it's going to have to drag the defense a little bit like it did a couple of years ago, like it did, in the first Super Bowl that Patrick Mahomes won. Yesterday, the defense came back to life. And again, I think it was a week that they needed because coming into it, they had not had success and they had not forced turnovers. And now they both kind of mentioned Trent McDuffie, Brian Cook, Justin Reid, all those guys kind of mentioned like, hey, when you see it happen and you experience it happen, then you believe it can happen again. And so this is probably the right time of year for the Chiefs to have this going on. And it really was difficult the previous 4 weeks, especially against some bad opponents. I think this is a good thing and a good time. We'll see if they can carry it on here to the next week.
And you're correct to identify the opponent here, the Browns and Jameis Winston. He's been turnover prone. But he also beat the Steelers in Cleveland, a very good defensive team. And they went to Denver a few weeks ago on a primetime game and put up, 32 points on the Broncos, which has an excellent defense, which really did a good job against the Chiefs at Arrowhead. So Brown's not incompetent, but a good effort all around from the Chiefs. 5 sacks. It'd be remiss if I failed to mention that. George Karlaftis with 2. So, just that 6 turnovers, by the way, the most in a Chiefs game since 2016. And again, the sacks, Chris Jones didn't get one of them, but he was involved in just about all of them, wasn't he?
Well, this is a good point you're making, Blair. This was a great game for the defense without the sacks. Without the turnovers. A very low yards per play from the Browns. By the way, I looked it up, guys. How many plays did the Browns run in the red zone the whole game?
Probably none.
0.
Yeah.
0 plays in the red zone the entire game. Obviously, they gave up that long run, an explosive run down the field from Ford. But to have a game, and this is something that's been different from Chiefs games here in the past. There was a lot of possessions in this game. I know you referenced this in your column, Vahe, but the Chiefs in the second half, when trying to milk the clock, had 21-second, 36-second, and 24-second drives. And so the Browns had the ball either 14 or 15 times, and the Chiefs in previous games have only been having 9 or 10 possessions. And so that's why the defense has looked worse than it really was, is because the point total has been low. But if you only have to guard a team for 9 possessions and you're fresh, you should do better. And they weren't forcing turnovers, and they weren't getting punts, and they weren't stopping teams from scoring. This one was really on them. The Chiefs offense was doing nothing to help out the defense in the second half, and yet the defense came through again and again and again. Like I said, I do want to give a little bit. I think we underrate the weather in this. The wind gusts really play with that thing. You know what I mean? And the Chiefs had more opportunities for these jump ball type interceptions than they did in other weeks. But this was hands down the best defensive effort of the year. And so the Chiefs defense definitely deserves credit for that.
One thing while we're on the wind, because Jesse, Sam, and I had an angle on the goalposts from where we were sitting, and it wasn't just the flags it wasn't every moment. It kind of was the nature of gusts, right? But we could see not just the flag swaying, but the goalposts, the uprights going back and forth. And I think that does account for a few things, right? Maybe some balls fluttered that wouldn't have otherwise. and that we'll save that for the Patrick Mahomes part of this. One other quick thing about the defense, though. So it's funny. I wonder how much differently we'd be talking about this game if not for that 62-yard touchdown run. Which what was weird about that was it came after another sack, and really, in essence, that was the only lapse of the game. And it shouldn't take away from the great game they played, but I think because the offense didn't kick it into gear with another touchdown and really, put it fully away, you come away feeling like the collective effort is still, kind of clunky.
If it weren't for that touchdown run, and who knows what happens on that drive if it's not a touchdown run, but we'd still be talking about the things we're going to talk about here in a moment with the offense. But if Chiefs had won that game 21-0 instead of 21-7, I think it'd be a little bit of a different feel and about the game itself, right? Don't you think?
Well, I think also Jesse and I were both talking about this. It's a little bit habitual now based on past performance, but once it became 21-7, I had every expectation. In fact, I think I said to you, Jesse, that by the end of the third quarter, it would be a one-score game. And it didn't happen that way. You get another interception, right?
That was McDuffie's, yeah.
Yeah, that was McDuffie's. But it had that feel. And I think that's the reason I bring that up, Blair, is I think that speaks to the point you're making, right? Because we've become so conditioned to seeing these games unfold that way that instead of feeling like this was a domination, you come away feeling like, yeah, they were, just one score away from having it be a typical Chiefs finale.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm higher on this one than that. Kevin Cole does some advanced numbers. He used to work for Pro Football Focus. That's how I'm going to advance box score at the end. The passing total from the Browns quarterbacks in this game, in terms of expected points added per dropback, was the fifth worst of any game this year by a quarterback. Two of those were with the Carolina Panthers. So you kind of throw that one out because they've been so bad. And then you're looking at he has percentile performance in what these games are. In terms of offense, the Browns was in the first percentile of games this season. So you're talking like a 1 in 100 effort from the Chiefs there. And in terms of pass offense, it was the 1.2 percentile. So again, kind of 1 in 100 type of performance from a passing offense against the Chiefs defense. So I don't really think listen, we can talk previous weeks about they've given up explosive passes. That's really dangerous because, if you're ahead, you need to stop the pass. If you're behind, you need to stop the pass. If you can't stop the pass, that's a really important thing. But outside of one particular run, the one explosive play when you're talking 14 possessions, lots of plays, I think this is about as good as it gets for a defensive performance in the NFL nowadays. And I'm not going to let one run take away from that, especially with how the Chiefs have been playing. I mean, I was kind of resigned to the fact going into the last 4 weeks, they had proven over time that this was kind of shifting from what we always talk about, Vahe, from like the weak and punt Chiefs from Patrick Mahomes where they can play complementary football to I don't think I can anymore. I think the offense has got to drag this defense along. This performance goes a long way for me thinking, maybe this can be a little bit more of a balance. Maybe this can be a thing where the defense contributes more than what it had previously. And that's a really important and positive development at this point in the season.
And just to clarify, I didn't feel like it really took away from their game. I think it played into the perception of how people seem to see the Chiefs. Because you hold an NFL team to 7 points, I don't care who they are. That's and a team, as Blair pointed out, that has had the ability to score big in a couple instances. So it's a pretty nice day for them for sure.
And I was going to say on their field and with the quarterback that they preferred, over Deshaun Watson, largest victory margin of the season for the Chiefs, lowest output by an Chiefs opponent this year. And the Chiefs now, don't look now, but they are number 5 in the NFL in defense and points allowed and yards allowed. So who knows? Maybe Jesse, you're on it with rounding into some kind of shape and not being having to be dragged along by the offense. Speaking of the offense.
Oh, just one other quick thing, Blair. I hate to always refer to the past in these, but I do think it gives us a little foundational understanding. Typically Spagnuolo's defense have gotten better later in the season. They just have. Last year we didn't really notice it because they were great all season, but by and large that's been a trend, and in part because they've had some flux with personnel, and because the schemes are typically kind of more complicated, maybe they're trying to simplify some things at this point. There was some talk of that before, but that first Super Bowl victory, I always think back to that. I mean, that streak that sent them into the Super Bowl started with a 35-32 loss at Tennessee. And, then the rest of November and on through, they played much better defensively and never lost again. So I think there is something there. It doesn't mean it will happen that way, but I think there's a reason to believe that that's a little bit of a common denominator.
Okay, so Chiefs up 21-0 in this game. And at that point, I'm thinking, that they got a chance to really put the hammer down, as Mitch Holthus likes to say. But of course, it didn't happen. And then I thought until then, for the most part, the protection was okay. I thought Joe Thuney had done a decent job in the first half at left tackle, and Mike Caliendo moving in at left guard. And they had made it work. But the stretch that I forgot who referred to it, Jesse, I think you did. There's the stretch after it was 21-0. The next 22 snaps for the Chiefs were 16 passes and 6 runs, and very little time came off the clock. So this was like mid to late third quarter into the fourth quarter, and also when at the end of that run is when Mahomes hurt his ankle midway through the fourth quarter. So did not end well for the Chiefs in that regard. Mahomes didn't get sacked in this game, first time in a while, after being sacked 13 times in the previous 3 games. Didn't get sacked in this game, but was pressured on, I think I got this right, 54% of the snaps, most in a game since 2020. So take us through what the problem was, Jesse, and where do the Chiefs go from here?
Yeah, so let's get some nuance here, because I know there's lots of opinions on what could have and should have been done. Just in terms of running the football, I told Vahe this. I was most surprised at the end of the third quarter when they had 21 seconds left and they didn't run it once, because we talked about the wind. The Chiefs were going against the wind. You run the ball one time, you're able to go second down and you flip the field, and that way Matt Ariza's punt goes 20 yards further. So that one where it lasted, went incomplete, and you had to punt against the wind. And actually, Ariza bombed one for 43 yards against the wind, but it would have been 63 yards, against the wind. It would have been 63 yards with it. That was the one really that I was just like, that one did not make sense to me. At some point, you have to gain yourself 20 yards, even if it's going to be a punt fest. So many things can be true at the same time, right? Seen a lot of criticism about Andy Reid's play calling. He admitted in the third quarter he didn't give his guys enough. He probably had a bad day, and he seemed to admit it after the game. And yet, if you could choose one person on planet Earth to call your plays next game, you'd probably choose Andy Reid. So I think we have to keep all of this in mind. Oh my gosh, what's he doing? He's terrible, whatever. Trust me, Chicago Bears would love Andy Reid to walk through their door and call their plays next week. The Houston Texans would love it. The Philadelphia Eagles are great this year, and they'd still love it. So all these things can kind of be in cahoots. Here was the thing I thought was most surprising, guys. And by the time this is up, it'll probably be up our details video with Brett Tavo, great analyst that we go break down plays every week. And he went back and looked at every single pass play. And the Chiefs, to play Joe Thuney at left tackle, they made a whole game plan for it. There were chips, there were tight end helps, there were rolls away, there were certain plays like Xavier Worthy's play where they just don't block him, and both aspects of the play, either a run to the right or the swing pass to Xavier Worthy, he's not going to impact it. That is Myles Garrett, because you're basically scheming to have him not impact it. But the bottom line is they made their whole game plan and focused their whole week on trying to protect Joe Thuney in this situation. And because of that, it has consequences. You know what I mean? You get less guys out on the route. And we know the Chiefs struggle with separation on their pass plays. And then you have your running backs chip. And frankly, guys, a couple times when they were supposed to chip, they didn't do a good enough job. And the running backs were not good in that particular aspect. So I guess what I'm here to say is I was surprised they started Tooney at left tackle, because not only are you putting an inexperienced guy at left tackle who's not used to it, you're also taking away your Pro Bowl left guard, who is Joe Tooney. And we're talking about running the football. Well, you can't run it as well if your guy that's at left guard, who is dominant at doing that on the inside, is now kind of trying to hold his serve on the outside. And so they hurt themselves in two positions by moving Joe Tooney to left tackle. I don't know their discussions behind the scenes. Maybe Mahomes went to Andy Reid and said, look, I can't do Wanye. That's it. No more, that sort of thing. But for this particular game, they lost a lot by putting Joe Tooney at left tackle. And this is not to blame Joe Tooney. He tried hard. He did the best he could. This is not his natural position. Andy Reid complimented him after the game. But this cost the Chiefs a lot, and potentially cost them a Patrick Mahomes injury by choosing to go Joe Tooney at left tackle when that's not the decision that they had to make. So to me, that one was the most interesting, confounding, and to do that, they had to just do everything in their game plan to try to help out Joe Tooney. And in the end, it still got Patrick Mahomes hurt. And so that to me has to be something they look at and go, maybe in the future, is this what you do? I don't know the correct answer, and maybe things would turn out the same way even if Wanye was on the left side. But that to me is the one you can question the most.
The thing that's interesting to me about it is they must have considered all of what you're talking about, right? That they're affecting two positions that way. And yet they really went to the emergency break glass scenario. And I guess it's just such a testament to where their faith in Wanye is now. I mean, you can only take it that way. For instance, to your point about building everything about, supporting and girding Tooney out there, they were free to do that with Wanye out there and then preserve the integrity of the middle. So I don't know whether they're right or wrong, but it certainly tells me that they have gone way in the tank on Wanye at this point.
Well, and we just mentioned it. I told you all those things they just did. And Blair, you just referenced the stat, 54% pressure rate, the highest that Mahomes has had in years. So that's they didn't put him on an island. They did everything in their power to help Joe Tooney, and that still happened. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, if there's a decision to go back and double look at, question again, I don't know. That one to me was not shocking, but pretty surprising that they decided to take, whether Wanye's performed well or not. He performed well at the end of the last game, which I thought might give them confidence to put him back out there. But like you said, Vahe, you can still help Wanye in that position. And if you do help him out, you still have a Pro Bowl left guard there, so that you can run the ball and you can have that particular spot secured as well. So this really was sort of an emergency type of situation that the Chiefs kind of created for themselves throughout the week by going to Joe Tooney. And so that to me was the one that I wonder if they want back or they wish they had back. But again, without being in those meeting rooms and knowing exactly what they know about Wanye and Patrick and Joe Tooney, I guess we'll never know.
I'd venture to say that no 13-1 team has ever had 4 different guys start at left tackle. Seems like a safe point.
Right. Well, the third one who started at left tackle was DJ Humphries, and he injured his hamstring in the previous game in the fourth quarter, and we saw him at practice last week, but was in sweats. He was just on the sideline. I got to wonder if it had been, a playoff game, might they had gone with Humphries in that spot, and so it makes me wonder if that'll be the case this week. If DJ Humphries goes back to, if he's healed enough to go back into the game at left tackle, and then they can get back to kind of what they had envisioned when they acquired Humphries, putting Tooney back at guard.
It's still a prayer, guy. I mean, DJ Humphries wasn't that good when he was in there either.
No, he wasn't.
Starting point to potentially, hopefully be better because it was his first game in a year. But that's the dilemma for the Chiefs. You look at all these options and you're just which one are they going to pick and which one's the best way to go with? They need below average left tackle play right now, and they can't find it among those 4 guys.
So do you want to hear this stat? The Texans and the Steelers are in the top 5 in pass rush win rate, which means they do a pretty good job rushing the passer. What is it? It seems like every week the Chiefs are confronted with, a Pro Bowl or an all-pro edge rusher, and they don't get a break on this. So whatever happens, they're gonna face elite pass rushers again over the next couple of games.
Well, I guess you could say at least they're continuing to get practice at dealing with elite pass rushers, and in theory, if they've got it in them to find a way, they're being presented with these fine challenges every week.
They need to get
the one thing. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, I do want to say, this is not a criticism. This is a compliment. Like, when Brett's going back through these plays of the Chiefs and what they did, they schemed the hell out of this game. They didn't go into this going, well, Myles Garrett, good luck, Joe Tooney. You know what I mean? Like this, it was like a Nick Bosa game plan they'd always do for the 49ers. Like, they had so much respect for him and what he could do that they here's, you guys will probably remember that Travis Kelce had like the out and up route down the sideline, and Mahomes threw it down. He wanted a flag, but it was overthrown by like 8 yards. On that play, the Chiefs have 3 guys out in a route against 7 defenders. And one of them's Travis Kelce, who we know is not moving this year as well as he has in years past. That's really hard for Patrick Mahomes. That's really hard for the offense. Like, how are you supposed to fit in a ball when you've got 2 guys for every player you're out on a route and an additional guy that can play safety? Because you're having 7 protect because you're so worried about how your protection is going to hold up. And again, it's okay if you can go back and you have, 2015 DeAndre Hopkins and 2022 Justin Jefferson and 2019 Travis Kelce, and when guys can juke everybody and get themselves open and separated and all that stuff. But like, that's not this Chiefs roster right now without guys like Hollywood Brown in there. And so it really is a dilemma. You really are picking your poison. The Chiefs already struggle with separation, and now you're taking a guy out of the route. You're having a tight end help block. You're having a running back help block. And 3 against 7 is bad math. It's just bad math. And so I don't know, Vahe, you can say you were there too. Like, it's being there just from mannerisms. Like, I could just sense a frustration from Mahomes like the whole game. He was not in sync. He was not really into it. You look at Pro Football Focus, this was his lowest graded game since the Raiders game on Christmas last year. So it's been quite a while, but this was a difficult challenge for him because he was not only getting pressure, but he wasn't getting support on the other end. There's only so many guys you can throw it to. And then when he had open guys, he was missing them as well. So this was just off. This was off even before he got injured. And like I said, I think it's interesting that the Chiefs kind of tried to completely flip what they normally do based off this one week and this one opponent, but they certainly tried to negate what Myles Garrett could potentially do to them.
Tentative is probably the wrong word on this, but it's interesting trying to think about Patrick's day yesterday because for instance, the long pass to Justin Watson on the 3rd and 5 or whatever it was early, our angle was kind of perfect on it. He had 15 yards in front of him if he wanted to run. He had Worthy breaking open all alone if he wanted to dump it off. Watson was basically double covered. It was a blustery day. He had to know that was going to be tough to throw anyway. I don't know what. I wish we could have had time with him to talk specifically through that play more, a play like that, because it's just, had he just done that play differently, I think it sets the tone differently for the way the game is played. And I think it would have demonstrated more of a feel for how that day was going to be. And so it was kind of a puzzling day all around for him. And you're right, Blair, I don't know if this showed up. I know this was one of those trips we didn't have everybody, but I know you were watching. I don't know if this showed up on TV, but that end of half thing.
Yes.
They had lost this game.
Yes.
That was, it was whatever, it was 4th and 2. They decided to go for it to try to really put it away. And, in the red zone, I guess, or just outside the red zone. And then Cleveland calls a timeout, but the Chiefs were the ones that looked confused already. Then they stick with it. Then they call a timeout. And now you got the field goal unit coming out there. And then Butker is signaling to Ariza because he's not out there. So that was a big coaching glitch. And the energy of the effort was reflected in Butker missing it. It just was sort of part of the whole sequence. But the reason I thought of that just now, Jesse, is that Patrick was showing his annoyance before, during, and after that, even as he came off the field at halftime.
He was pissed. He was pissed on that play. And I honestly think that's why they went for it on fourth down later. I think that was Andy's mea culpa because they didn't go for it on the earlier one. The late fourth down, there was no reason to go for that one.
Right.
So yeah, it was a weird day. Listen, first guy here to say, like, we all have bad days. We're all grumpy. Sometimes I snap at Vahe, the nicest man in the world, and I never should. You know what I mean? So
We all snap at Vahe.
I know. I mean, sometimes it's just it has to happen. But listen, this was one of those Mahomes days. He had a little bit of agitation to him, and I think the offense not working like he wanted to was definitely part of that.
Meanwhile, the Chiefs are an NFL best 13-1, and magic number to clinch the number 1 seed in the AFC is 2 with the Buffalo Bills and 1 with the Steelers, meaning any combination of 2 Chiefs victories, Bills losses, or 1 Chiefs victory, Steelers loss, and that'll eliminate the Steelers, and then the Bills would be eliminated. So starts this week, the beginning of the condensed week, the tight schedule. Texans on Saturday. Texans already clinched their playoff spot. They've won the South Division, so nothing but playoff teams left for the Chiefs the rest of the way, right? Texans, Steelers, and then Broncos. Looks like the Broncos will be in the playoffs, and then of course the playoffs begin after that. Whether the Chiefs will be playing in that week after the Broncos or not, that remains to be seen. So,
well, Blair, I'm sorry, you finish.
Go
your
ahead.
thought.
No, go ahead.
No, just well, it cuts into much as I'm cutting into your words. It cuts into a point you were making earlier, and I think Jesse's can really elaborate on this, but it's interesting about the odds makers already reacting to Mahomes. And it begs the question of what you feel like they know that we don't know. And what I can't account for in this formula is we all know this is a guy who can just regenerate a knee if he has to, right? I mean, he is a little bit above and beyond the mere mortal that basically everybody else is when it comes to dealing with an injury and meeting the moment. And this moment, even though it might in some ways seem like, well, they can afford to rest him if they have to, the knee's a little bulky. They better win this game. They better do all they can to secure that number 1 seed. In essence, it has a little bit of a playoff meaning to it. It's not, do or die. So maybe they have to play it a little differently, but I'll be more surprised if he doesn't play than if he does.
Oh, I would be too. He's only missed 2 games in his career.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's when his knee was as you said, his knee was sideways. That's what got him out.
Yes. So I think it's interesting in terms of the odds making. And Jesse, I wonder if you could speak to that a little too. Just, I mean, when you see that happen, okay, we're saying Vegas doesn't think he'll play. Well, what does Vegas know? And I'm not saying it like, what does Vegas know? I really don't mean it that way. I mean, but what do they know?
I think they know it's a short week. And I think they know that if you're talking about the Chiefs and the next 3 games, I got to win 2 of them. And maybe he's a little bit healthier for that Wednesday game, a week from Wednesday. Listen, your guys are right. He's superhuman and he plays through pain unlike anybody. The problem here, and I saw Chase Daniel talk about this on national television today. Chase played with him, knows his game as well as anybody. And he said, the concern with the right ankle injury is that's your push-off ankle. And that is where you drive your power from. So he said, left ankle, not so much. You're step and throwing, no big deal. The other part of it, he said, that was really important is that when Mahomes has had this in the past, he's navigated it by just not moving in the pocket. We saw yesterday, every pass he made, he had to move in the pocket. So, he can't be a statue. That's not allowed on this Chiefs team right now because of what they're playing at left tackle. So, it's fascinating. To your point, Vi, it's tricky. I mean, they've got to win 2 of these next 3. I mean, they are, well, let's just put it out there. They're not as good as the Lions and they're not as good as the Bills. So to be able to have the best chance possible, they need the bye and they need to get healthy and they need to play all their games at home. And even if they play the game at home against the Bills, they probably might be an underdog at this point since the Bills just score 40 against everybody. So this team desperately needs the 1 seed. And they kind of are desperate right now to figure out how to get to that point. So I don't know if it's sitting him this week and hoping he can play Wednesday. It's tough. It's tough. And this is where the short weeks really hurt them. So we'll see how it plays out. But based off that number you talked about, Vahe, on the sportsbook line and what do they know, Like I said, it's fluctuated. It started as 2.5 Texans, it went to 1.5 Texans, and now it's at 3. So, whatever whisperings are out there, they're saying that Mahomes is right now leaning towards not playing.
He's playing. All right. That's a great conversation with Vahe Gregorian and Jesse Newell. Big thanks to our producers, Randy Mason and Monty Davis. You've been listening to SportsBeat KC. Thanks. Let's do it again soon.